The war was over. The humans had lost. Commander Virel walked slowly through the remains of the human base. Smoke rose from the broken buildings. The air smelled of fire and metal. Bodies were gone. Only silence remained. She was tall, strong, and cold like all members of her species, the Zelari. Her black armor shone under the red sun. Her eyes, silver and sharp, showed no emotion. She had one mission: search the base, take anything useful, and destroy the rest. Virel moved through the ruins without fear. She had fought many battles. She had seen humans scream, cry, and bleed. Her people believed humans were weak, soft, and foolish. They felt too much. They loved too much, and that made them easy to defeat. She entered a half-broken room. It looked like a place where someone once lived. A small bed, now burnt. A table, flipped over. Metal shelves with old, dusty objects. Then she saw it. Lying under a broken chair was a small leather book. She picked it up slowly. It was strange. It had no screens, no wires, just paper and ink. The leather was cracked, but the pages were still there. She opened the book and saw human writing. Her orders were clear: destroy all human relics. But something stopped her. She looked around. No one was watching. Virel sat down on a cold rock and began to read the first page. My name is Captain Eli. Marcus. I don't know if anyone will ever read this, but I need to write. I need to remember who I am, even if I don't survive. Virel blinked. Why would a human write for no one? She kept reading. Today I saw the stars. They looked beautiful. But I can't stop thinking about my daughter. She would have loved this planet. Green skies, 2 moons. We named it Haven, but there was no safety here. Virel frowned. Her people didn't write like this. They used data reports, numbers, facts, never feelings. This human was writing about his child. His daughter. Y. I held her picture today. It's the only thing I saved from Earth. She had red hair and the biggest smile. I miss her laugh. I miss her hugs. I miss being human. Virel felt something strange in her chest. A small pull. It was not pain. Not fear. It was soft. She did not understand it. She closed the diary and looked up. The wind blew dust across the ruins. Somewhere far, an old metal door creaked. Virel stood up and stared at the diary in her hand. Why did she care? It was just human weakness. Emotions. Memories. Nothing useful, but she could not throw it away. She looked around and slowly slipped the diary into her armor. Later that night, inside her dark tent, she opened the diary again. The war camp was quiet. The other Zelari soldiers were busy celebrating their victory. But Virel was not celebrating. She lit a small lamp and turned the pages. They said we had to leave Earth. They said we'd find peace here, but we brought war with us. The Zelari don't understand us. They don't even try. They think we're weak. Maybe we are, but we love, we dream. We cry. That's what makes us human. The words hit her like a soft hammer. Not sharp but deep. Her people did not dream. They followed orders. They obeyed. They never cried. Virel touched her own cheek. Dry. Always dry. She read for hours. Captain Eli wrote about battles, lost friends, and silent nights under the stars. He wrote about music and stories, and his mother's cooking. He wrote about pain, but also about hope. Virel could not stop reading. Before dawn, she closed the book. Something inside her had changed, but she did not know what. She stood up and looked at the stars above. They were the same stars Eli had seen. And for the first time in her life, Commander Virel felt alone, not because she was surrounded by enemies, but because she was no longer sure who the enemy really was. Asterisk. Commander Varel could not stop thinking about the diary. Days had passed since she found it in the ruins of the human camp. She hid it inside her armor, close to her chest. Every night, when others slept, she opened the book and read more. She told no one. The war was over, but her battle had just begun inside her own mind. She sat in her dark tent, her eyes locked on the page. The words pulled her in. I saw Juno. Today, she reminded me of my daughter. Just a young soldier, maybe 19. She was laughing in the snow. I asked why. She said, "Because I'm still alive, sir." That was the last thing she ever said. A plasma round hit her 2 hours later. VRL. Pause. She could see it. Girl laughing in the snow. And then gone. She felt something again. That soft, strange ache. The Zelari believed pain was weakness. But this human, this Captain Eli, he had lived with pain every day. And still, he smiled. Still, he fought. During the day, Virel followed orders like always. She walked with the other soldiers, patrolled the empty lands, and sent reports back to High Command. No one suspected anything, but inside she was changing. That night, she opened the diary again. The next page was stained. It looked like water, but she guessed it might have been tears. They said war makes you strong, but I feel broken. I'm afraid to sleep. I keep dreaming of the ship we lost, Section 9. I hear the screaming. I hear the metal twisting. And then silence. Always silence. They don't tell you that silence can scream too. Virel shivered. She had never dreamed. Zelari minds were trained to rest, not wander. But now she wondered. What if her people did dream and just never told? She looked around her empty tent. She was supposed to feel proud, victorious, but instead, she felt hollowed out the next evening. She broke a rule. She went to the restricted area, the place where recovered enemy data and personal items were kept. She told the guard she was doing intel checks. She had one goal, to learn more about Captain Eli. She found his file. The screen lit up. Name. Captain Eli Marcus status. Captured. Cell 7. Awaiting transport. Her breath caught in her throat. He was alive. The man whose words had shaken her was not dead. A human, weak, emotional, and broken, had survived everything her people threw at him. And he was here. Virel left the data room quickly. Her thoughts raced. What would she say to him? Could she ask him about the diary? Would he even speak to her? She didn't know. That night, she read the final pages of the diary. If someone finds this book, maybe even a Zelari, I hope you understand we didn't come here to fight. We just wanted a place to live, a place to feel safe, a place to be human. If you can feel anything when you read this, then maybe you're not so different from us. Virel closed the book slowly. She sat in silence for a long time. She, a commander of the most feared army in the galaxy, had been changed by a few pages written by a man she had never met. She had been taught to see humans as animals. But now, she wasn't sure who the real animal was. She looked at the book again. A final thought came to her. If humans can feel so much pain and still hope, maybe that's real strength. The next morning, she made a decision. She would visit Cell 7. She would face the human whose words broke her walls. She had to know one thing. How did a man like Eli survive when everything he loved had been taken away? The prison wing was quiet. Commander Virel walked slowly down the hallway, her boots clicking against the cold floor. 2 guards stood outside Cell 7, their faces blank. They didn't question her. She had high clearance, but inside her chest, her heart beat faster than ever. She was not here to give orders. She was here to face the man whose words had shaken her soul. The metal door slid open. The room was small and dark. A human sat in the corner, hands chained, head down. His beard was rough. His body looked thin. But when he raised his eyes, something burned inside them. Virel had seen many humans in battle. None had eyes like these. He stared at her, not with fear, not with hate, but something sharper. Recognition. You're one of them, he said, his voice dry. Come to watch me die? Virel did not speak at first. She took something out from under her armor and placed it on the table. The diary. Eli's eyes widened. He stood up slowly, his chains clinking. That's mine, he whispered. Virel nodded. I found it in the ruins. I read it. The room fell silent. For a long time, neither of them moved. Then Eli laughed, but it wasn't happy. It was bitter. You read my soul, alien. Did it make you feel powerful? Virel shook her head. No, it made me feel something I've never felt before. She told him the truth about how his words had followed her, how the image of his daughter, of Juno laughing in the snow, haunted her, how she had felt empty, even after winning the war. Eli looked at her with tired eyes. So, what now? You cry and turn into a better alien? No, she said softly. I just want to understand. How did you survive? After all that pain, how are you still here? Eli sat down again. He looked at the diary, then at her. Because I had to be, he said. Because even if I lost everything, I still had hope that someone, someday, would know we weren't monsters. He leaned forward. You read it. You're proof that hope wasn't wasted. Virel felt the air tighten around her. I don't understand how you can feel so much and not break. Eli smiled weakly. We do break, but we rebuild. That's what makes us human. Outside the cell, footsteps echoed. Virel stood quickly. Guards were changing shifts. She had to leave before they started asking questions. But before she turned away, she looked at Eli one last time. I'm not supposed to care, but I do. Eli gave her a tired nod. Then maybe you're not so different after all. That night, Virel couldn't sleep. She stared at the stars through the window of her quarters. Her world had changed. Everything she had been trained to believe about. Strength, victory, control. It felt hollow now. What if strength was not silence? What if it was feeling pain? And choosing to go on anyway? She opened the diary one more time. At the very back, hidden behind the last page, she found something she hadn't noticed before. A folded photo. A human girl with bright red hair, standing on a beach, smiling wide. Eli's daughter. Under the photo, scribbled in rough ink, if someone reads this and understands, then maybe humanity still has a chance. Virel stared at the picture for a long time. For the first time, her hand trembled, not from fear, but from something new. Empathy. Later that night, she stood outside the prison door again. This time, not as a commander, but as someone searching for the truth. And deep inside her, something human had started to grow. Commander Virel had turned off the cameras in the hallway with a silent code only high-ranking officers knew. She walked slowly, not with power, but with something far heavier. She was going to see him again. The human who broke her walls. The prisoner in cell 7. Inside the cell, Captain Eli Marcus sat in silence. He didn't move when the door opened. You came back, he said quietly. Virel nodded. I'm not supposed to. That makes two of us, Eli said, giving her a tired smile. She pulled a small object from her armor. The photo. The girl with red hair. His daughter. Eli's eyes filled with something raw the moment he saw it. You found that? He whispered. I didn't mean to, Virel said. It was hidden in the back of the diary. Eli took a slow breath. Her name was Lena. She was only 6 when I left Earth. Virel looked at the photo again. The girl's smile was wide, pure, full of life. She had your eyes, Virel said softly. Eli gave a weak laugh. She had everything good I ever had. There was silence between them, but not the cold silence of enemies. It was something deeper, like two souls on opposite sides of the galaxy, suddenly standing in the same space. Why are you really here? Eli asked, breaking the quiet. I don't know, Virel admitted. I used to believe humans were weak, too emotional, too soft. And now? She looked at him. Now I think maybe that's what made you strong. Eli looked away. I'm not strong, he said. I broke a long time ago. I just kept moving. Virel leaned forward. But you didn't turn to hate. You didn't turn into a monster. No, Eli said, because then I'd be no different than the ones who took everything from me. The words hit her harder than a weapon. She had taken orders. She had destroyed homes, ended lives, because it was her duty. But now she wasn't sure who she was anymore. She stood up to leave. But Eli spoke again. Commander? Yes? Why did you keep reading the diary? She didn't answer right away. Then she said, because, for the first time, I wanted to feel something real. Outside, the stars glowed over the cold. But inside Virel, something warm had begun to stir. The next day, a new order arrived from Zelari High Command. Prisoner Eli Marcus will be transferred in 72 hours. Interrogation and termination confirmed. Virel froze. Terminate? After everything she'd read, everything she'd felt? She couldn't let it happen. But if she acted, it would be treason. Helping a human escape? A war prisoner. It would cost her everything. But she looked at the diary. The photo. The words that had changed her heart. And she made her choice. That night, she returned to cell 7 one last time. You have 72 hours, she said quietly. Then they will kill you. Eli didn't flinch. I guessed as much. I can help. You escape, she said. He looked at her with tired eyes. Why would you risk everything? For me, Virel answered with the same words he once wrote. Because even after all your pain, you still hoped someone would understand. She paused. And I do. Eli closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, there were tears there. But not from sadness, not from belief. Then let's make it count, he said. Asterisk. Time was running out. Commander Virel had made her choice. She would help the human escape. She had broken every rule already by reading his diary, by speaking to him, by feeling something for him. But this was the point of no return. If they were caught, it would mean death for both of them. But Virel no longer feared death. She feared becoming a machine again. The next night, she returned to cell 7, this time without armor. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp. I've studied the shifts, she said. There's a gap 1 minute, every 3 hours, when the outer camera resets. That's our only window. Eli stood slowly, rubbing his wrists. They were bruised from the chains. Do you trust me that much? He asked. Virel looked at him. No, she said. But I trust the man who wrote that diary. Eli gave a quiet smile. Then let's make this count. Virel had planned every detail. She had stolen a guard's ID chip. She had disabled the silent alarm in the hallway. She had even arranged for a food delivery drone to arrive just as the escape began, masking the movement on the scanners. But the hardest part wasn't the plan. It was the goodbye. Before they moved, she handed Eli something small. The photo of his daughter. You should carry this now, she said. Eli looked down at it, his fingers shaking slightly. I never thought I'd see this again, he whispered. Now you will, she said. Now you must. The plan began at 3 o'clock. The guards were tired. The hall was empty. Virel led Eli through the dark corridors, past doors marked with warning signs and symbols of war. Alarms stayed silent. Lights stayed red. Just as they reached the security gate, a voice crackled in Virel's ear. "Commander Varel, report to the control room. Now." She froze. Someone was suspicious. They were out of time. Virel turned to Eli. "We go now. No more hiding." She slammed her fist into the override panel. Sparks flew. The gate opened with a loud hiss. But the sound drew attention. 2 guards at the far end of the hall turned their heads. One reached for his blaster. Virel didn't hesitate. She stepped in front of Eli and fired her stun weapon. 1 guard dropped. The second raised his gun, but Eli, using strength built from pain, rushed forward and tackled him to the floor. They ran down metal stairs, through old storage rooms, past a silent drone bay. They reached the outer airlock. Freedom was 1 door away, but Virel stopped Dot. She turned to Eli. "Once you leave, I can't follow. They'll know it was me." Eli looked at her. "You can still come. We'll find a way." She shook her head. "My people would chase us across the stars. You need to survive. Tell your story. Make it matter." He didn't want to leave her, but he understood. He stepped into the airlock chamber. Virel handed him a small data chip. "This holds a copy of your diary. I encrypted it using my access. Send it to someone who will listen." Eli looked at her one last time. "You were never cold, Virel. You just didn't know what warmth felt like." Her throat tightened. "Now I do," she said. The airlock door closed. Eli was gone. Back inside, sirens screamed. Command had discovered the breach. Virel stood in the hall, blaster in hand. Soldiers surrounded her. Their guns were ready, but she didn't fight. She didn't run. She simply whispered to herself, "Maybe this is what it means to be alive." And for the first time, she cried. Far above, in a stolen escape pod, Eli looked down at the burning sky. He held the photo close, then looked at the diary. "I'll tell them," he said. "All of it." Asterisk. The stars were quiet. Eli Marcus sat alone in the tiny escape pod, drifting through space. He had no food left, no weapon, no plan, but he had something far more powerful. A story, and a message the galaxy needed to hear. He held the small data chip Virel had given him. It contained his diary, the words he had written in pain, in fear, and in hope. But now, those words had changed someone. Not a human, but a Zelari, a soldier built for war, who chose compassion instead. That meant something. That meant everything. The pod signal beacon was still working. Barely. Eli used the last of its power to connect to a long-range communication line. It was unstable. But he could send one broadcast, one chance. So he did. He stared at the small screen. His voice was weak, but steady. He pressed record. "My name is Captain Eli Marcus, and I am a human. I am not a warrior. I am not a monster. I was a father, a friend, a man who saw too much death. But this isn't just my story. It's hers too. Commander Virel of the Zelari army. She read my diary. She was my enemy. But in the end, she saved me. She felt something. She cried. She chose to protect what she was trained to destroy. That means there's still hope. We're not that different. We both bleed. We both fear. We both dream. If anyone hears this, let this message go beyond borders, beyond species. Let it remind you that peace can grow, even in the ruins of war. Not because of power, not because of orders, but because one heart chose to listen. He pressed send. The signal flew out into space, bouncing between satellites, caught by old beacons, copied by curious machines. It was no longer just a message. It was a spark. Months later, across the galaxy, on different planets and stations, beings of all kinds began to hear the message. Some ignored it, some laughed at it, but others felt it. In quiet homes, in tired soldier camps, and in schools where young minds were learning, the message was played. And for the first time in years, many stopped to think, what if they're not so different from us? On a distant moon, a young alien girl watched the message twice. Then a third time, her mother asked, "Why do you keep watching it?" The girl replied, "Because it makes me feel like I'm not alone." And on one hidden planet, far from war, an old Zalari general sat by himself. He was Virel's father. Had not heard from her in months. She was listed as missing. But then he received a data packet marked personal. It was from her. It contained only one thing. The diary. He read every word. And by the end, he too cried. Somewhere in the void. The escape pod was found by a neutral science vessel. Eli was rescued, barely alive. They gave him water, food, rest. And when he woke up, he asked one thing. Did the message go through? They smiled. It did. Years passed. The war between humans and Zalari ended, not in fire, not in blood, but in silence, because neither side could ignore the message anymore. A human's diary, an alien's tears, and a shared truth.